So, Trishen, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
It's great to have you on the show. And before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Durban in South Africa. I attended school at Glenwood Boys High School, and then I studied my Bachelor of Business Science, specializing in information systems and strategic management. I was recruited from university to Accenture, one of the big consulting houses. I spent a few years at Accenture. I moved on to spend a few years at IBM. And then I joined kind of a little startup, Liquid Telecom at the time. And, I've fallen in love with startup types of
Yeah.
businesses ever since.
Well, I believe they're not that small anymore. It's quite a
Not
sizable.
anymore, not anymore.
Right. But before we go there, Trishan, let's just go back. And can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I was I think then it was called Standard Six, right? Which is kind of the equivalent of grade eight now. My mom was a teacher and she was a guidance counselor, and she brought home quite a thick book of careers. And being fascinated by the book, I decided to page through and think about, what do I want to do? I always had a love for computers and IT and tech growing up. I broke quite a few of my father's gadgets trying to be a tech engineer along the
Right.
way. But I remember coming across a position at that time, which was called a systems analyst. And ever since then, being a systems analyst is what I always wanted to do. So I studied along the lines of IT, computing, and then I grew from a systems analyst into an IT architect, and from an IT architect into what is now the chief information officer roles that I've been fulfilling recently. But I think growing up, I've always had a fascination for anything tech. So my dream career was a systems analyst, and I grew from there into architect and now into CIO.
So, Trishan, who inspired you in your early days?
I can't think of a single person that inspired me. I think I've always had God as my compass and my inspiration. And I think I've had great support from my wife and my family and my kids, and my parents in supporting me in terms of anything that I wanted to learn or achieve or do. So there wasn't necessarily one specific person that inspired me. I think I had fertile ground of which from which I could grow.
Now, you won a number of awards. You're leading a quite an impressive career as a CIO with some of the big companies. Looking
Mhm.
back over your career, Trishan, are there any turning points where things could have gone different?
I think the biggest turning point for me was back at Liquid, where I gained my then boss Raul Duplessis as my mentor. And I think what he did was he gave me the opportunity to be part of the conversation. People always think of mentorship as being a very formalized thing. And for us, it wasn't. He gave me the opportunity to just be part of the conversation, to listen to other senior leaders and be part of those meetings and learn from that. And I think, a turning point for me was when having had the opportunity to be in those situations, I started to believe in my own ability. I started to believe that, I actually was good enough to be a senior leader, and I was good enough to sit in a boardroom with senior executives who were at the time much older than me, and be part of that conversation and contribute to the conversation. So I think a big turning point in my career was the point where I started believing in myself and my own ability, and not being the youngster in the room who's just there to listen.
Right. And can you tell us what is driving you today? What is motivating you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, I've always enjoyed startup companies, startup cultures. Creating something beautiful out of nothing in the beginning is what I take pride and joy in doing. And I think, as I grow in my career, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is watching those around me flourish, creating an environment in teams where people can flourish with their own ability and enjoying the successes of others and not just the success of myself or the organization, but watching those around me grow through the journey and flourish in their own abilities.
Now, Trishen, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
The future of leadership to me is the ability for leaders to adapt to the world we live in today. The world we live in today is rialed with complexity. And by complexity, I don't mean complicated, I mean complex in that there are so many factors that affect any particular challenge or problem that you face, and you're expected to think through that and unpack that in a very short period of time and react to it. If I think back to the days of when we first had TVs or when we first had microwaves, from the time those things were invented till the time you had to kind of mass adoption was 30 years, 50 years. Whereas you look at the environment we work in today, things change in a matter of days. If you think about ChatGPT, it started, I think, November, December. By January, February, it was a massive things. And for leaders to, think systematically through that complexity and respond in that in an era of rapid change, is the future of leadership for me. The future of leadership is the ability to lead in a world of complexity, uncertainty, and rapid change.
Now, you mentioned your own leadership journey when your mentor brought you into the room, gave you access to important conversations. What is it we have to do more to develop future leaders and to enable future leaders?
Yeah. I think we've always seen traditional leadership, and traditional leadership was about how to manage teams and how to manage people. Um, I think leadership now is one of more inward, it's more an inward looking journey. We have to learn a different set of skills. Leadership historically was about managing people, managing scenarios, managing things, whereas leadership today is the ability to learn a different set of skills that will allow you to respond to the new environment and the new world that we live in. I think we rely sometimes on the way things were used to be. A human nature has this familiarity aspect to it. We like to stick to things that we are familiar to. Um, but the types of challenges that we face in today are challenges that we've never seen before. We need a different way to deal with the challenges of today.
Now, talking about challenges, these are challenging times, especially for leaders. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges for me is, when you look at a business problem, um, you look at that problem in isolation and you institute a change uh, to improve that situation of concern. But what we fail to realize that the business world, or the business ecosystem, should I say, um, works holistically. A change that you institute in one area often has changes in other areas of the business that we neglect to account for. Um, so one of the things that kind of I've been focusing on is, how do I apply a systems thinking methodology to the business problems I face? If I affect a change in one area, how does that affect the business ecosystem as a whole? And I think that's where I would advise future leaders to kind of focus your learning, and focus the ability to think more broadly than the problem that stares you in the face. Because when you look at that problem that stares you in the face, it's often a problem to you, but another person looking at exactly the same scenario would see it as not a problem at all. And until you understand that entire business ecosystem, um, you end up chasing problems and creating consequences in other areas for something that may not have been a problem in the first place.
Right. Now, Trishen, if you were to develop a curriculum for future leaders, what are maybe one or
Hmm.
two new skills you would want to factor in and it maybe teach?
Yeah, I think for me, like I've alluded to, the first one is seeing things systematically and holistically, taking a business ecosystem view of problems. Um, the, and I think the second thing for leadership is kind of looking inwards at yourself. I think as leaders, when you face rapid change, you are required to respond in rapid time. And we don't spend enough time looking inwards at ourselves because even as leaders, we all have weaknesses and blind spots. I mean, that's human nature, right? We have strengths and we have weaknesses. And I think we sometimes neglect to take an external view of ourselves and how we show up in the world every day and how we are perceived and how people perceive us. Because leadership is not so much about doing, but it's about encouraging others to succeed. And one can only do that successfully when you look at yourself from an external, non-judgmental viewpoint and look at what you're good at and what your improvement areas are, because we all have blind spots and we all have weaknesses. And we need to continually work on ourselves as much as we work on our leadership ability, as much as we work on learning theoretical knowledge. So those are the two kind of areas I would advise future leaders to look at. Look at a system, a systems thinking view of the world, and a business ecosystem view of the world, but also spend a lot of time reflecting on yourself and how you show up and how you turn up in the world and how you interact with the world.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned mentorship. You mentioned the
Mm.
role that mentorship played in your own career. Can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Mm. Look, like I said in my own career, with me and my mentor, it wasn't a formalized mentorship program. It was the opportunity that was created for me to be part of the conversation and learn, and approach the person with a question or a thought or an idea and not be judged for their thought or idea. And I think that's the environment that I strive to create within my team. I always have discussions with them and kind of give them some interesting stories about things that have happened to me and things that I've learned along the way. Um, and how I've thought about situations or problems. And I find that form of mentorship, that conversational mentorship with your team, is how I like to mentor. I can't say that I have specific people that I mentor, but having those open and honest conversations about things that I've experienced and I've learned with my team allows me to mentor the whole team and create a team that is highly productive and highly effective. And I think it's worked very well. If you look at one of our recent accomplishments as a team, we managed to deliver four, really big integrated applications for my current employer in a matter of 3 months. And I mean, if you had to ask anyone in IT, delivering four large integrated applications in 3 months is almost impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And because the team um, were given the right level of mentorship, given the opportunity to be part of the journey, and to ask the right questions and to take ownership of things, we actually pull it off. So, mentorship for me, yes, I mean, some people may prefer a more formalized way of mentorship, but for me personally, mentorship is something that I do every day with my team in the conversations that we have.
And looking back over your own leadership career, are there any role models of leadership who you have encountered and maybe worked with, who you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Mm. Look, like I said, I mean, all humans have strengths, all humans have blind spots and flaws,
Sure.
right? So I wouldn't say there's one leader that you should follow or focus on. I think for future leaders, it's always good to be informed, and I would encourage them to keep reading about leaders and different types of leaders, and learn from those leaders the good traits and the bad traits. I mean, the idea is not to learn about a single leader and become that leader. I
Sure.
think the challenge that we face is, how do you grow your own leadership style and your own leadership ability? And you do that by looking at both the positive aspects of other leaders as well as negative aspects of other leaders, and gaining from there the qualities or the attributes that you want to build into your own leadership ability. So not one single person. I encourage people to read about different leaders, read about a wide range of topics, and look at that information and decide what is the type of leader you want to be. What are the characteristics of different leaders that you want to combine to create your own leadership style?
Thank you. Now, Trishen, where can our listeners follow you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest, I'm not big on social media. I think in recent years I've found social media as a mechanism where people um, use it as an advertising framework or a complaints framework. So you wouldn't find me always very vocal on social media. But I'm always willing to meet new people and have chats about different things. I prefer grabbing a coffee with someone, even though I may not have met them before. But grabbing a coffee and sharing ideas and sharing thoughts and different things that are happening in the world. I enjoy those kind of personal interactions. Where I do sometimes find something that I feel is impactful for me, I generally share it on LinkedIn, which is a corporate kind of idea sharing platform. But I mean, I'm happy for people to reach out to me, Nick. I mean, if people drop me a message on WhatsApp and they want to have a chat about a particular problem or a chat in general, I'm always open to talking to people and discussing stuff. I love sharing ideas. I love different industries, different things, and my life has been a continual learning journey. So as I discuss and talk to people, I also learn new stuff along the way.
Great. Now, last but not least, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are looking to finish school, to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
Focus. I think dedicated focus. We are bombarded with information from all angles these days. If it's not from the news and media, it's ChatGPT, it's Google, it's uh, there's just this bombardment of information because we live in a digitized society. And I think one thing through it all is maintain focus on what is important.
Hmm.
I recently completed my MBA, and it was challenging because life has its way of throwing um, curveballs at you all the time.
Absolutely.
And those curveballs often cause you to lose focus on what you really want to achieve in your life and your career and the purpose for your life. Never lose focus of what you want to achieve and where you want to go. Um, be astute at cutting out the noise of the world that happens around you, and always maintain your focus in your studies, in what you want to achieve, in who you want to become, and the person that you want to become, and the legacy that you want to leave. Focus to me for younger people growing up is extremely important. It's very easy to lose it, but if you maintain it and you stay the journey, you'll achieve the outcome that you want to achieve at the end of it.
Trishen, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership and really sharing these important lessons for leaders to lead their career and I guess to lead their own life.
Thank you very much, Nick. It was great chatting to you. Great sharing ideas with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.